Ready? Okay, awesome. All right. Well, first of all, thanks for sticking around, everybody. I know it's kind of been a long day, a lot of good conversations. I'm Phil St. Jacques. I'm president of St. Jacques Marketing, based in Morristown, New Jersey. And I think everybody heard me say before that we specialize in franchise organizations. We're going to go into that a little bit later on. This is Pat O'Neill. He's the CEO of a company called Amp Your Good. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence. We're going to talk about scalable marketing solutions, and we're going to talk about that customer engagement. And we're going to do it in a different way. I think the way we're going to do it is through a crowd feeding platform, an innovative technology platform that Pat's company developed, and how we kind of took that and embraced that and helped marketers kind of take that idea and bring it to a marketing solution. So, Pat, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. Well, hi everybody, and as Phil said, thanks for sticking around. It's not only sort of the end of the day; it's the end of the week, and it's pretty cold out there. So what I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about what our company does to sort of ground you in some of the things we're going to talk about a little later on. And so, let me see if I can get there we go. So at Amp Your Good, we've developed technology that we consider disrupting the charitable space, disrupting charitable giving, and particularly what we call goods-based giving. So there's three ways that any of us, any of our companies can conduct charitable activities. We can donate our time, we can donate money, or we can donate stuff. And this kind of stuff that we tend to donate, and that's here in the US, maybe $50 to $60 billion worth of stuff. We typically donate through the kinds of drives that most of us are familiar with. Food drives, blanket drives, toy drives, clothing drives, school supply drives. And those kinds of drives are typically sponsored by a wide variety of groups. Companies sponsor these kinds of drives, civic organizations, schools, youth groups. And so we've developed an online model to enable groups to conduct these kinds of drives, and particularly food drives. And let me just ask for a quick show of hands. Just raise your hand if you've ever made a donation to a food drive. Okay, that's great. You know, whether I'm talking to sort of smaller audiences or 1,000 people, when I ask that question, pretty much everybody raises their hand. And that's great because we all in some way connect to the idea of supporting hunger. And it turns out that donating food in the US is actually the most common form of charity. That's good because in our country there's somewhere between 40 and 50 million people who are struggling with food insecurity, so it's great that a lot of people want to help them out. But there's a problem with how food drives work, which our technology solution really makes a difference for. So it turns out that most of the food that we all are used to donating to these traditional food drives is not really optimal for the people it's trying to help. The 40 to 50 million people who are struggling with food insecurity also struggle with really high rates of diet-related health issues. So obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and those cans and boxes that we're used to donating. And traditional food drives are limited to non-perishable foods, are very often highly processed, fairly unhealthy food. And so even though we all have good intentions to help, we sort of unwittingly donate food that may in fact be contraindicated to the people that we're actually trying to help. So we've developed this online model that we call crowd feeding. And crowd feeding is sort of a play off of crowdfunding, where groups who are looking to run food drives use our technology to run that drive. And it works very similar to how crowdfunding works. So if a group wants to use our platform, they get a web page that has information about their drive. And when the company food drive or the school food drive, when the leaders of that drive reach out to the community to tell them about the drive, instead of telling them where the collection box is and where people can bring food to, they direct them to a web page. And when people get there, if they're inclined to donate, they hit a donate button. And what appears for them are healthy food items that they can purchase right at our platform for the purpose of donating to the drive. So you can think about this as a virtual collection box. So people are buying food, and at the end of the drive, we deliver all that food to the specific hunger organization that drive is supporting. So we're going to get into sort of the AI and tech underpinnings of this in a little bit, but I just wanted to sort of ground you on how that works, the basics of what our company does. And Phil, I think you were going to talk a little bit about St. Jack's?
Yep. And I have to stand because Pat's tall, and I want to be the same size as him. President of St. Jack's Marketing. We deal with marketing and media strategies, mostly at scale for brands that sell through independently owned and operated distribution channels. And there's challenges to that. So, so I think someone here is from American Express, right? So when American Express says, we do something at corporate, it gets executed throughout the system. Same thing with Starbucks. Corporate says, the system does. In a franchise system, it's different. With 1,000 points of distribution, each of them owned by an individual entity that does not have to do anything. How do you get everybody? How do you scale something across a system where that person is reaching into their pocket to pay for these initiatives? So how do we scale that? Those are the things that we work with. It's really around the independent distribution. It's about franchising, and it's about a lot in healthcare. We do a lot in healthcare. But one of the things, and how this kind of relates to what Pat was talking about, this crowd feeding, is he brought the technology to us, and one of the things that franchise systems are really good at are local marketing. They all want deeper connections in their community. They want meaningful, lasting relationships in their community. So how do we do that at scale? So brands come to us and they say, okay, give us the digitals, give us the blocking and tackling. Give us the Google, give us the digital stuff, but what are the things that can really drive revenue in local markets? So one of the things we explored with Pat and his technology platform was, can we find the nexus between the mission-based organization, local marketing, scalable technology, and charitable alignment? Can we put this all together? So if we look at a company like Jersey Mike's, based down the shore in Jersey, there are 1,000 locations across the country. They do not require their franchisees to spend any money on local marketing. But what they require them, in every franchise agreement, they have to name a charitable organization. And that charitable organization is their local marketing forever and ever, amen. And those stores do phenomenally well, and they are very ingrained within their community. Sears, hardware, same thing. When they come into a market, they align themselves with the police departments and fire departments because they know they're going to be competing with Home Depot and Lowe's, and they can't beat them with price. But if they have a deeper relationship in those communities, they win. So can we find the nexus of these things to create a dynamic local marketing, scalable marketing scenario for franchise systems? And we came up with this concept called Chef's Community Table. And it was really about testing this hypothesis. And so what we were able to do was I wonder if we could hook restaurants together using Amp Your Good technology platform and create a fresh, prepared meal drive, the first of its kind in the country. So if anyone's ever donated to a food drive, and most of you have, it's been a can of something in your pantry in a box somewhere, right? And that's typically how food drives are run. I don't know if Pat went over this. One of the stats is 90% of that food, or there was a huge percentage of the food donated to pantries, is unusable, it's expired, and it cannot be used, and it gets discarded. So the benefit to that person is never actually realized, to the person receiving the food or the person actually giving the food. This concept was different in that we were going to restaurants and asking them to offer up a signature meal, putting it on the AMP platform, and offering them, and offering those meals as the product in the drive. So we took 6 restaurants in the area, Cozy, a franchise system, The Office, Georgia Martha's, they're owned by Villa Pizza, Malt Pizza, they're the ones who invented it. Grand Cafe, Chef Freddy's Tables, Washington Street Bistro. What we did was we got these 6 restaurants together and said, give us 3 signature meals that you would want to offer on this drive. We have a little video just to kind of explain the concept a little bit more eloquently. It's going to look a lot like me and Pat talking, so but bear with us. But it goes over the concept of the Chef's Community Table. I'm Philip St. Jacques. I'm the president of St. Jacques Marketing, and started the business in 1991 with my twin brother Mike. And we focus on scalable technology solutions and digital marketing strategies for franchise organizations. How do we scale programs across a system when the marketing landscape is getting much more expensive, complex, and cumbersome?
I'm Pat O'Neill. I'm the CEO and founder of Amp Your Good, and we operate a crowd feeding platform.
This platform is a phenomenal way that brands can kind of help ingrain themselves in the community in a very fundamental way. One of the programs that we're running on the Amp Your Good platform is called Chef's Community Table. We're going to be hosting this whole campaign. Restaurants are being asked to make the meals that they are already great at making. People can easily make donations. We'll handle all of the difficult parts so that it's really simple and convenient for people to help out in a way that they can understand the impact that they're having. In our country today, it's kind of embarrassing, but there are about 50 million people who face hunger. Think about 1 out of every 3 children, almost 16 million, that suffer from food insecurity. There's a big problem that needs to be solved. And besides needing food to feed themselves, a related problem is lack of access to healthy food. Typically, the way it happens is you get a box, you run a drive, and it says, bring a can of something and put it in this box. Our platform enables organizations to run food drive campaigns that instead of people donating what they usually donate to a food drive, they can donate meals from restaurants, they can donate fruits and vegetables or sandwiches. And so now they have a way to not only help people who face hunger, but help them with the right kind of food.
Why can't they have fresh carrots, fresh meat, things that are local, things that are enjoyable to eat?
So the Market Street mission, we actually had the pleasure last year of partnering up with them for their 125th anniversary. So we actually provided lunch for them and their guests.
This is a really innovative way to meet the need for the poor with not only food, but nutritious food.
When it was presented to me, I realized immediately that you're using technology in a way that has never been done before. The way the restaurant community has kind of embraced the concept of Chef's Community Table has been unbelievable. You know, when I write the story of St. Jacques, I want to say I helped somebody. So this was the idea, and this was the hypothesis. Like, can we get this to happen, and can we get this to scale? Can we get this to work? And I think, you know, we worked with restaurant owners because, we worked with restaurant owners because they are fantastic marketers. No, they're not. They're the worst. Everything to them looks like a meal that they want to cook, and that's fine, right? They run their businesses like chefs, and that's fine. But they are not marketers. So what we had to do is really develop the system. What is a system that they will follow? Because we know a lot of these guys are in the kitchen, preparing the meals for the day, making the specials for that day. So, as a fast forward, launch the drive, create the campaign, set up the technology, set up the marketing plan, gave them all the tools, gave them the process. So with this simple test, we raised over 500 meals, but these were 500, chicken franchise. These were signature meals from top restaurants in the area that prepared these foods, and we just essentially delivered a giant catering order to the Market Street mission in Morristown. So we're going to get to the AI, like what's the underpinning of this, as Pat talked about, but we raised over 500 meals. We collected data from all different points. We collected data from the restaurants, we collected data from the donors, and it really led to more questions than answers. And I think the one question that kind of jumps out is, what motivates people to donate in this way? So people are used to, going to the supermarket and putting $1 in the can for the soccer team, right? That's donation. Writing a check to something, right? It's something that they believe, that they believe strongly about, right? This is a kind of different drive. We're asking somebody to kind of take on a different look at donations and understand a whole new paradigm in terms of how you give something of real value. So we really wanted to understand this. What motivates people to donate this way? And we want to understand the symbiotic relationship between the restaurant, the donor and the customer, and the charity in a much, much more fundamental way. So I'm going to turn this over to Pat for his data points.
So let me make a couple of broader points to start off with. Does anybody here subscribe to Blue Apron? Okay, no. Has anybody heard of Blue Apron? Okay. So if you're a Blue Apron customer right now, you can go, and it's a meal kit delivery company. I assume everybody knows that. So if you're a customer of that company now, this week in fact, when you place your order for your meals, you can press a button and send the meal that you're having to a hunger organization, which is essentially the same concept that we developed with Chef's Community Table. And I think that what's interesting about what Blue Apron is doing and what we're doing with our experiment with Chef's Community Table is that why is it that people donate? This question that Phil asked. The fundamental reason why people donate is that it makes them feel good that they know that they're doing something to support a cause that they like. Now that there's quite a bit of science and research that sort of backstops that simple premise. Certainly people do not donate because it makes them feel bad, because if it makes you feel bad, you're not going to do it. And so the question becomes, when somebody is thinking about donating, how do you amplify that experience? How do you make it the best experience that it can be? And you might be thinking about that, let's say, from the perspective of a nonprofit that's soliciting donations, but from a business perspective, how do you attach a charitable act to your brand? How do you marry those two together? And so what Blue Apron is doing, they're leveraging off of something that they're very good at. They're making meals, and they're connecting with their consumers, with their customers, at the point in time that these people are thinking about the food because they're placing their order. And that's really what we were doing with Chef's Community Table. At that moment in time when somebody is thinking about their favorite meal, that's the time to get them thinking about sharing that meal, essentially, with someone else. Part of the title of our session here is Knowledge Navigator. And I don't know if that term, when you saw it, meant anything particular to you, but it's basically a 30-year-old way of saying smartphones. And I think that's representative of the fact that we're all kind of living more and more through our phones. We're all living sort of more in the moment. And as brands, as businesses, as companies, how are we connecting with who our customers are or who we want our customers to be in those moments? Now, what we've done at AMP is we've really worked at building a technology solution that leverages the fact that people and organizations in these times are increasingly interested in accomplishing a social good. And I'll ask you for another quick show of hands. Would you consider the company that you're at to be a socially conscious company? Does your company have an identifiable thing or set of things that it does that represents the notion of helping others? I see one show of hands. I see a couple small show of hands. Okay. I think that companies are increasingly in these times feeling the need to have identifiable causes that they support. I think hopefully partly because that's an inherently good thing, but it's also a practical thing for them. I think people who are looking at working for companies are increasingly interested in that aspect of what the company stands for, whether it's the product they make or the other things that they do. And so from a consumer marketing standpoint, being able to engage customers at moments in time when you can attach your company's brand with a cause that you and the customer can believe in at the same time is something that's increasingly important. Now, what we've done is we've looked at charity as something that is not totally data free, but it's this immense area of activity that has very little data collection associated with it. And what I mean by that is, if any of us send $20 to a charity or 50 or whatever the amount of money is, you may have a notion of what that money is going to be used for, what it's going to accomplish, but in many cases you don't really know. You assume that it's going to do something good, and so in that case the question becomes: is there a way to let you know much more specifically what your good intention, what your monetary donation is going to accomplish? Likewise with the system that we've developed, which is really designed to provide people with a very clear idea that their donation activity, their charitable intent is meant because, in our case, you're buying specific items, specific food items, and so those items are going to be consumed by somebody who's dealing with food insecurity. And it makes a difference, not to everyone, but to many people, to know that the food that they're donating is more appropriate. And so in addition to just that notion, we are also adding a layer of data over the entire process. And so if has anybody here used Uber? Yeah, okay, that's kind of 100%. So, you can track the car that's coming to pick you up, very easily. And so since everybody here has made a donation to a food drive, when you put that can in a box someplace, that's sort of your endpoint of the charity experience. You've done your part, you've put a couple of cans in a box. But now imagine that, when you buy a bag of apples, you can track how that bag of apples is going all the way out to the point where it reaches a hunger organization and get some feedback from them. So it creates a much longer experience. I think for many people a more satisfying experience because it sort of extends the charitable act that you're conducting through a series of, on one side we can describe it as data points, and on the other side, just from an experiential standpoint, providing you, I think for many people, at least the feedback that we've gotten is a much more satisfying and robust charity experience. And the point of that is, if it really feels good, you'll probably want to do it again. And that's the underlying point. We look to amplify people's good intentions. That's how we talk about it. And one of the ways you do that is you make people feel really great about something that they're doing with the hopes that they'd like to repeat that.
That's terrific. So, we talked about the underpinnings of the data, and as we're a Salesforce partners, and we're working on our Marketing Cloud certification, and there's a couple of big players that are in the artificial intelligence space, and we're not talking about if you looked at that Knowledge Navigators video back that John Scully created back in 1987, where they essentially they predict the future of the iPad and the cloud-based data and the interaction between to a screen and the operator. But that was really very far-reaching in terms of what they planned on. We call this area of understanding of the data this deep learning area. So as Marketing Cloud partners, there's actually two really big players in the space. There's IBM's Watson, which I'm sure you've heard of, and there's Salesforce's Einstein, which is really artificial intelligence for everyone. They're going to be launching Einstein, which is this artificial intelligence marketing platform over all of the Salesforce products. So it's going to come standard with all their applications. I found this cartoon. I thought it was funny, so you're going to have to laugh at this. It's becoming more and more human, using only 10% of its brain power. Come on, man. These are the jokes. All right. So Einstein is really going to be if you want artificial intelligence marketing out of a box, Einstein and the Salesforce products will allow you to get that. So what do we mean by artificial intelligence? It's really, it kind of has three areas that we look at as a company. It's really that deep understanding. What are the things that we can infer from the data set that we're collecting? How does it interact with our CRM and our processes that we put in place when we're collecting data? And the data store. Where are we getting our data from? Where are we getting new data from? How can we model our campaigns and develop the predictive content around the data, right? So before we spend, $500,000, $1 million, $2 million launching campaigns to test something, can we use our data store to launch campaigns virtually to understand how they're going to perform? So it's really an innovative approach and a very efficient approach, especially for marketers that are more and more unwilling to experiment on the unknown or new ideas. There's very little learning. One of the things that we do is really close that gap between marketing and sales, right? So it's not marketing doing their thing over here and sales happening over here. It's how do we draw that straight line? Because our clients hold us accountable for the straight line. When I give you $1 for this, does it generate $2 over here, and draw that straight line for me? This helps us draw that straight line. So with Chef's Community Table, there were a lot of things that we needed to understand about the data and the donors that donated to that campaign. And it was really around that mindset of what are they thinking when they make this pledge. And we've had people actually donate for the very first time. So when we kind of looked at our data set and we kind of did some follow-up research, there were people that this was the very first drive that they've ever donated to. And then we've had people that were big donors, regular donors, and people that would buy 25, 30, 40 meals from a restaurant that they supported. There was a kind of a huge chasm between the people that donated. We needed to understand all of that stuff. So the way we kind of look at the data, the way we kind of model our hypotheses, so to speak, this really kind of helps us get a better understanding and start to draw some inferences.
Yeah, I think a couple of the other things that we learned, and this comes out of the Chef's Community Table program that we ran, but we see this more broadly across AMP in general. So convenience as a contributing factor in charitable activity is very significant. Now, convenience is a factor in most things, but we have some very good data that sort of proves that out. So why would somebody decide to donate one meal to Chef's Community Table or a dozen meals? Part of it is that they don't have to make the meal or take it to any place. When you're participating in a conventional food drive, whether you're taking some food out of your pantry or whether you're going to the supermarket, it takes more time and energy to make a donation. More broadly, most of the food drives that AMP runs are akin to the screen that I showed you before, where people are donating fruits and vegetables and other healthy food. And system-wide, the average donor donates about 25 to 30 pounds of food through our system. And if you can think about the last time you donated to a food drive, I'm going to imagine that it probably wasn't more than maybe one bag of groceries, maybe a couple of cans. 25 to 30 pounds might be 3 or 4 or even 5 bags of groceries. And it's a very rare person that would actually carry 3 or 4 or 5 bags of groceries to a collection point. So convenience is really, really significant. The other factor really is outcome. The perceived outcome of what my donation is going to do. Now, food obviously feeds someone, but we definitely see an increase when people feel like they can better understand the actual impact they're going to have. It's not just sort of any old food that they're donating. It's something more specific that they can attach to. So with Chef's Community Table, people really like the idea of donating a particular meal. It might be a meal that they enjoy or that they just know would be a good meal. When we were first developing Chef's Community Table, one of the examples I used was Barbie dolls. So when people donate toys to a toy drive, they don't say to themselves, well, I know the little girls that might be getting toys from this toy drive might like a doll. Let me go to the dollar store and find the cheapest doll that I can buy that will probably fall apart as soon as the girl starts to play with it. They would buy a branded doll, a Barbie doll, something that they could envision some little girl better enjoying than an unbranded doll. Now, whether that's actually true or not, that's sort of beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. But from a donor standpoint, having a better understanding of what you think you're going to accomplish is a really important factor. So those really are, I would say, the two biggest things.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. So when we talk about that, the artificial intelligence marketing and that deep learning, you've probably experienced some of this already. So anybody in Netflix have a Netflix account, right? So you've watched this, you might enjoy that. That's predictive modeling, right? That's predictive learning. That's you've exhibited some type of behavior, and based on that behavior, we're going to serve something up. So marketers are already starting to use this stuff. What Einstein is going to do is really synthesize a lot of this into one dashboard to help brands that utilize the Salesforce platform get deeper learnings. So it's a much more concise platform. So some of the things that we look at are really the predictive scoring, which is about likelihood to engage, right? The likelihood to engage, right? That's a huge metric. Predictive audiences. So, based on this likelihood to engage, you can build segments based on behavior, right? So these are the things that are really are important to us. Predictive product and content recommendations, and you've seen this. So Amazon is really good at this. They're fantastic. People who bought this also like this. You bought this, we're going to recommend that, right? So a lot of that stuff is already being used. Automated send time optimization. I think somebody had a question about email before. When is the best time to open an email? Boy, wouldn't you love to deliver an email at the time the receiver is most likely to open an email? Do they do it before work? Do they do it after work? Do they do it on the weekends? When is that time? So you can automate that process based on when the receiver has demonstrated the behaviors about when they are most likely to open, as opposed to sending out 50,000 emails all at the same time, or some kind of regimented time process, not based on data, based on assumptions. Social sentiment insights. Tone and sentiment of social conversations, right? So Salesforce, and this is, I have got no horse in the Salesforce race. We just use them. We just happen to be a partner, and we use them because they just run the world. But they were looking to buy LinkedIn, not for its revenue generating potential, because of its database potential, right? So how much is in your LinkedIn profile? How much is in your Facebook profile? They completely understand that data is more valuable than any type of advertising they can put on LinkedIn. So the idea around the social sentiment insights, determining the tone and sentiment of social conversations to insert an appropriate message at the right time. That's important. When we talk about, I think somebody mentioned before about an ad comes up on the screen, you want to get it out of the way as fast as you can. There was an earlier session. The gentleman kind of mentioned something about that. The ad comes up on the screen, you want to get it out of the way right. So that's obtrusive. That's interruptive advertising. This is talking about appropriate kind of blending the right advertising at the right time and getting predictive about when we do those types of things. Language insights, managing and measuring conversations for over 1 billion sources in 10 or 20 different languages. Spam detection insights, remove known spam sites and posts, right? Really important stuff. Image insights,
classify images, see visual data, be able to make inferences in terms of advertising placement based on images that are posted. So how many, obviously everybody's posted some type of image to their social profiles, right? And it's got some type of subject matter in it. And then automated classifiers, tag posts that meet defined criteria. This is coming in, I think it's launching around first quarter 2017. It's going to be available to every marketer on the Marketing Cloud platform. It's going to be available. So you don't need to be and it's going to be automatic, right? So it's not going to be something you need to kind of turn on or figure out. It's going to come as part of the Salesforce platform. They're just going to lay this data over the top. So when we talk about artificial intelligence marketing, it's already here. We're already experiencing it. And now it's going to be much more accessible to a broader range of marketers than ever before, right? So I think this is the type of things that when we look at Chef's Community Table and we look at the donor patterns, this is the type of modeling we're going to be looking at, especially the predictive scoring, that likelihood to engage, and then building the segments based on behavior. Those are the kind of attributes that we want to understand. What else is happening in somebody's life when they are about to make some type of a donation, and a donation of this type? Did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you really covered it well.
Do you want to see the joke again? No? Okay, we're going to move on here. Great American Food Drive. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, so I want to talk about this. Let me ask you guys another question. Are any of your companies, do you feel like you're using AI presently, or is this something that you foresee your companies needing to use or planning to use?
I think that we should be using it. I don't think we've really quite used it. I do have a question. I don't know if I should save it later or now, because I am curious about how you guys are defining AI in terms of what you're doing in marketing, because I don't know what we're doing with AI or not. I feel like it's not.
Yeah.
Why don't you take that?
Yeah, thanks. I think that the term artificial intelligence is kind of a misnomer. It's really that it's really deep learning. It's really what is that mechanism or that tool that can help us look at the data, look at the data's I guess the criteria that we define, and help us make inferences based on what we're seeing, and find those patterns, and then make those suggestions, right? So I think that's where, I'm sorry, your company again? Yeah, I'm sure they're going to have to be. It's probably not sitting in marketing. It's probably sitting in some type of like data science somewhere. It reminds me of I was at a conference about a year ago, and the VP of marketing for Victoria's Secret was the keynote speaker, and she was talking about data. Like her job is really data, and so she went on to explain the highest turnover position at Victoria's Secret is the data analysts, those people that crunch the numbers that have to deliver to me what I need to do for the next 6 months. So I don't need guys on Valentine's Day or guys at Christmas. I need the women between those events. And that's the most important segment to me. So I'm not so much interested in dashboards or new tools. I'm interested in the people that can deliver those insights to me. So I'm sure those insights are already at American Express for sure are being delivered to the marketing teams. I hope that answered your question. Is that?
Yeah. So here's what I guess I'm thinking is there's certainly a lot of number crunching that happens in American Express because of the amount of data that we generate or that the cargo holders generate. But to me, and we're doing all of that, looking at segmentation, etc. But I think where the artificial intelligence should come in, and where I'm keen on is instead of having, as you've said, a bunch of data analysts sitting down and figuring out all this data, where is the artificial intelligence part of this that just takes in all that data and kind of spits out all the insights, as opposed to people having to manually comb through all of this.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm curious whether you guys have used some sort of automated tool that actually gives you that insight right away, Is that something that Einstein gives you, or other tools that you use, so that you don't have to keep manually doing this over and over again, like piecemeal?
Yeah, piecemeal is the right word. So, that's how we build based on what we're looking at. It really kind of depends. There's not a tool that takes all of your data and kind of analyzes it and then starts spitting out recommendations. You kind of have to put in assumptions. So right now we're building them piecemeal, right? So what are the things that we want to look at from we've launched a campaign, we're going to make some type of predictions. We do a lot of research prior to launching the campaigns. So we'll do a lot of testing, a lot of insight-based qualitative and quantitative research. So before we actually do anything, we're kind of already starting with a data set that gives us a hypothesis. Then we test the campaign, we launch the campaign, and then we've got the data that comes in. Okay, what actually happened? So, our media team is really good at kind of peeling back the layers of that onion, pulling all these data sources together and doing exactly that. It's kind of using some technology, but manually putting it all together. So as we kind of migrate everybody towards the marketing cloud, it's really going to be the overlay, that artificial intelligence, that deep learning overlay that we're really looking forward to, because it's going to eliminate all of that pulling stuff from here. And I'll leave you with this one point. The challenge around that is that it becomes data fixed in time, right? So the data is good for probably 3 to 6 weeks out, but after that we've got to do this all over again, right? So there's a lot of redoing of efforts. It would be really good to get that in real time.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in and add a couple of points. I think that so AI is a hot term these days, and it's a hot term in that businesses are increasingly trying to get their arms around what it means to them. It's a hot investment thesis right now. You have a lot of venture capital that's going into fund many AI companies. And it's probably like a lot of other technologies that have developed over the last couple of decades, where there's a gap between what people want it to be or what they think it is and what it actually is right now. So I think there are some really excellent applications of AI when there's two criteria. One is where there's really massive amounts of data, and secondly, where there's a really big payoff. And I say that because the bigger AI companies are really expensive to use. And so if you're the Department of Defense, if you're a Fortune 100 company, if you're a foreign government, you can afford the spend to utilize this to get some insights that are truly AI, in the sense that no human being's got the mental horsepower to connect data sets in a way to reach conclusions that are valuable. I think one of the things that Einstein does is it takes the expense of putting all that stuff together, and on a user basis, on a smaller company basis, makes it affordable so that they can start to gain some of these benefits. But I think that what many companies will find, however they're investing in AI, that the payoff doesn't come because they turn the light switch on and all of a sudden all these insights start pounding out. I think that you need to have lots of data, and we all are creating more data, sort of individually and as organizations. But I think the level of sophistication of what AI can do today is pretty early innings compared to what it may be doing 3 or 5 years from now.
I agree.
So I think that there are different technologies that come along, and you have your early adopters, and the early adopters help define whether everybody else should start doing it or not. I think the early adopters right now have proven out that there's some really valuable things that come out of it, but I think that until the price point becomes more affordable, a lot of companies aren't going to get the benefit out of it that maybe they expect. And I think that with the Salesforce product, and I'm just generally familiar with it, I think conceptually it makes a lot of sense, and Salesforce has had a pretty good track record of taking things that are very expensive to do on a single organizational basis and developing these systems, and they make it affordable to companies.
And accessible.
And accessible.
Yeah.
So let me talk a little bit about the Great American Food Drive. One of the inherent problems that I essentially have touched upon with charitable giving is that there isn't a lot of data that is associated with charitable giving. Our company is not a very old company. We're just a couple of years old. We've been growing very fast with this thing that we do. We are organizing with a number of partners a national scale food drive next May. The Great American Food Drive. It took us a while to think of that name. And so next May, hopefully you guys will hear about this through some of the marketing efforts that we make and some of the media coverage that we'll have. But you can be anywhere in the country and you'll be able to donate defined healthy food items to one of a wide variety of hunger organizations. And why I wanted to talk about this as part of the presentation is that we expect this to be a kind of charity drive of a scale that it's going to create lots and lots of data for us. And that is the precursor from our perspective to be able to get into using AI to help us with better decisions or seeing insights that we can use moving ahead. But it is also a drive that for the first time there are a whole set of brands that can be part of a food drive in a way that they couldn't be before. So we have branded produce companies. If you're a branded produce company, you could think of Chiquita Bananas, Dole Pineapples, and other companies that either make or distribute produce. You now have a way to participate in this kind of cause. So from their standpoint, it's cause marketing. And we have other kinds of companies that aren't really food companies that want to be associated with a sort of a smarter, better way to do things. So we have technology companies that are going to be partnering with us, really because this kind of thing aligns with their brand, both in terms of helping a particular cause that many people can relate to, but it's a technology solution to help that cause. And so, getting back to, the Knowledge Navigator, and how do you make brands, how do you keep your brand relevant? One way is to engage them where they are when they are. And what we do with our system is basically, if you want to help support hunger with a food donation, you can always do it through this, 24/7. And we know when you do it, obviously. And so, our brand is meant to mean for people that you can help support a particular cause in a way that you can understand what's happening, that you can do it very conveniently, and you can get a lot of feedback. And those couple of points really relate to any product or service that any of us might be looking to sell to our customers. So I think we wanted to have a little time for any other. Do you have more to cover? Or?
Nope, I'm good. Is there any questions? Anybody want to know anything? We've got a good question over here. He gets a gold star so far. So, am I giving out any other gold stars? Questions? Did you want to wrap up with anything, Pat?
Well, I don't know how much time do we have left. I know we started early.
We started early, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Well, I had a question I thought I could throw at you. I don't know what you guys find. From our perspective, there's 10,000 new apps on the Apple Store every day, and there's so many different new ways of doing old things and new ways of doing new things that it's kind of hard to separate the wheat from the chaff of, what am I as an individual or from an organizational standpoint, where are we going to place our bets, giving all these opportunities to do different things, new, better things. And that's certainly true for this landscape. Yeah. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective, given all that's happening in the marketing area of various tools, you've talked about Einstein and what Salesforce is coming out with. Is there a one thing that you would say of everything out in the landscape is really the thing that companies should be focused on? It's going to, it's a real thing. It's going to deliver better ROI than all the other things out there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's really about, understanding and getting really good at that one-to-one customer journey, right? So I think that's what all this is kind of leading towards. As advertising gets more and more intrusive, and it's so ubiquitous, right? And it's almost it's harder for marketers to kind of make those connections, right? So the deep learning is going to help us with that one-to-one journey and really kind of understand who that person actually is. But it's going to help us scale that knowing that person individually. You can't go through a data set of 1 million records and truly understand who that person is without some type of technology to kind of augment that data set. So it's really understanding that one-to-one journey, and how you get there is really different for every brand. But I would say of all the things that we see, it's just getting much more relevancy. One example is Pandora. I like Pandora, and I don't pay for it. I use I just stream it, and I get an ad every once in a while, and it always boggles my mind that every once in a while I'd get a Home Depot ad at 2:00 in the afternoon, like on a Tuesday. I'm like, now who the hell is going to buy a hammer at 2:00 on a Tuesday, right? So they haven't quite figured out that one-to-one journey, or who I am sitting at my desk on a Tuesday afternoon to serve me that relevant information. That's kind of what we're talking about, and it's really the holy grail, and what all of this stuff is moving towards.
Great.
Great. So I've got a question for you. And it's really about the Great American Food Drive. So you talked about pulling all these partners together, and you talk about kind of launching this campaign. How does your technology scale? And how do what is the optics for that charitable organization? So if you've got a food drive that's launched across the country, and you've got to service hunger relief organizations, how do you split that up?
Yeah, well, I think that our model is really based on the idea of reverse engineering the data flow in terms of how drives work. And I say it that way because I'm going to guess that, again, the last time any of you made a food donation to a food drive, you kind of decided what you were going to donate. You might have pulled something from the pantry, or you're at a store and you see something on sale and you put it in that box and it makes its way through the system. So we've reversed the information flow, because where we start off with is what are the people who are struggling with food insecurity really needing in terms of food items, and we get that information based on interviewing the hunger organizations that are going to be receiving food, and finding out specifically what they're looking for. So I won't go back to the screen earlier in the presentation that had all these different food items on it. I don't know if you could get back to that. One of the early ones. Forward one. So that screen, when somebody is going to make a donation through that page, the items that appear on that page are based on data that we collect from the hunger organization that food is going to. And so what appears there is driven by what they tell us they're looking for. So the donor is able to have some choices to make, some selection to choose from, but there's no bad choices. So anything that they pick is what that particular hunger organization needs. So the Great American Food Drive is going to probably have maybe as many as 1,000 hunger organizations across the country, and we will have collected data from all of them in terms of what they're looking for. And there are certain fairly common items that most hunger organizations look for, but those that are serving different ethnic populations that may have different food preferences will wind up having maybe a population of 50 to 60 different food items that this particular hunger organization is looking for these 10, a different one is looking for these 8 to 10, so they get to tailor that. Our system in that regard essentially works like a wedding registry. So on the logistics side, we are using data to make sure that the donations are the appropriate donations. And then what we think about on the donor side is the user experience. Our platform needs to be very easy and friendly to use. You need to be able to get to it, and if you have an affinity for a particular hunger organization, get to the place where you can donate the food that you want to donate to that particular hunger organization. Or if you're coming and you're not really particularly interested in a specific organization, you just want to help the cause, that you can do that easily as well. So that's how we're kind of mirroring all that together.
It's fantastic, and I think it sounds like again, it's going to marry a couple of things. Huge data set with, and I think lining up the appropriate food items for the appropriate regions, for the appropriate hunger organization, and allowing people to participate easily. It's no small undertaking.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of work, but you couldn't do it without a significant technology platform. That's for sure.
That's fantastic. I think we're wrapped up. So before we go, does anybody have any last questions or comments or anything? I think we're the last session of the day. So, well, first of all, thanks for sticking around. I know it's been a long day, and we'll be here for a couple of minutes longer if you have any questions. But thank you, Pat. I really appreciate it. He's the one who invited me, so I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for coming.
I'm happy.
And thanks everybody for coming. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.